Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to my show, Tea With. Tonight I'm having tea with Stephanie, and I'm also enjoying a nice cup of organic passion plum tea. It's actually a very fruity tea, and I'm really enjoying it, actually. Stephanie, do you drink tea at all?
Only daily.
Okay. Well, why don't you say hello to everybody and introduce yourself?
Well, hello everyone. I'm Stephanie. Met up with this Mr. Awesome's guy a couple of months ago, or yeah, it's just been about a month ago, I guess. Um, and we've kind of hit it off. I'm coming from a background of dealing with depression and getting cured with that, and that's pretty much about it. I try and stay super busy too.
Okay. Stephanie,
Mhm.
do you meditate?
I try. Um, it's not something that I grew up with, not something that was accepted in the household that I grew up with. I grew up in a strictly Christian, Bible thumping, um, what you would call Bible Belt kind of environment, and the Eastern religions and crystals and naturopathic stuff, all of that was kind of on the other side of the fence. It was looked at as being evil, the occult, just not accepted. So none of that was really brought into my life in an acceptable way. However, I was drawn to it. I remember researching it in beginning in high school, looking for other avenues, other paths, because I knew that the way I was feeling inside and the way that I was experiencing life through my own eyes was not conducive to the household that I was being brought up in. So I started playing around with meditation, and I never really could get into the practice of it. Um, I would meditate and feel good, but then I'd feel guilty as well because I was doing something that wasn't accepted in the household I grew up in. So that's kind of my experience with meditation.
Okay. Um, it's important to, for you or for people to, clear one's mind. And have you ever been under or related to anything to do with anything like a psychic attack, like, negative energies?
I lived in a negative energy household. I was bombarded with negative energy from the time I was 5. Um, it's growing up in my family was just one negative thing after the other. So, my escape was books, um, kind of, and that's kind of how I meditated back then because books were acceptable and I could get in there and just kind of lose myself and I'd blank my mind and I'd just go into that world and that would be it. Writing was another thing for me to to meditate. Writing is very cathartic to me, and that's the way I dealt with the negative energy and the negative drain on my energy.
Okay. And Stephanie, um, how about spirituality? How does spirituality play a role in your life?
I've always considered myself a spiritual person. Um, I've always believed in a higher power. So whether that be the God of the Bible, the God of the religions out there, the Great Spirit, the Source, I've always known and felt rather intimately and rather deeply that I was connected to something that was a whole lot bigger than myself. And I feel that I connect to that best when I'm out in nature, when I'm out, um, just taking a walk or hiking or just sitting under a tree. But it's all a very spiritual experience for me. And that's totally not acceptable in the family I grew up in. They're very into the Bible thumping, and I don't mean it to sound negative or anything. That's just how they are. They go to church on Sunday, and they go to church on Wednesday, and they go to the potlucks on Fridays, and so they're very integrated in church, and that's where their spirituality is. To me, that always seemed a little more superficial than deep. I've seen, family members that have gone to church on Sunday and have turned around and gone against the Bible Monday morning. And to me, that wasn't a very spiritual experience. And I feel that I have a deeper connection than that. And that I didn't need to go to church to have that connection.
Stephanie, what about self-destructive, patterns? How have you overcome self-destructive patterns in your life?
First thing I'm going to say is it's not easy. I struggled with self-destruction for 26 years before I realized that I didn't need to listen to the self-help books, which basically say overcome your issues to get past them. As long as you're aware of what's going on in your head and you're actively choosing in the moment, you can overcome pretty much everything. It's a lot easier to move past a momentary thought than it is to try and move past the entirety of your past or the entirety of the worry of your future. One of the things that Tom Cassidy's friend Richard Wilkins really hit home, that resonated with me, was the fact that my past is research. I always used to feel guilty because I wasn't doing anything with myself. My family always thought of me as a failure. They always saw me as a failure, that I'd never amount to anything. And that was drummed into me from grade school. So being able to view that past that I lived through as research for my future, that I didn't that I wasn't stuck in that past anymore. That's actually how I overcame the self-destructive tendencies that I had. Obviously, it's not a quick fix. It's not going to be all fixed in one day, but I would say I've probably overcame 98% of it.
That's really awesome. We're getting into some deep stuff over here, okay? And What have you done to, eliminate emotion-based decision making?
Being aware. That is literally the only thing that has stopped me from emotionally making decisions. Being aware constantly of my thoughts, of how I feel, of how other people are making me feel. Those three things right there have really stopped the emotional reactions. Um, when you're having a discussion that can turn into an argument really easily, and you're not aware of how you are reacting to what they're saying, it's going to be an argument. But if you're aware that they're saying this, and oh wait, yeah, this is making me feel this way, and you know that it's making you feel that way, you've got that instantaneous moment to turn around and say, you know what? I don't choose to react that way. Let's go this way. And I've found that arguments turn into discussions instead of discussions turning into arguments when I do that. So I'm always being aware of my thoughts and my emotions and how those are being triggered by certain things somebody says, or the way they look at me, or the way they act, or even, somebody could be making a joke, but it was a joke that in the past would have, from my family or somebody in my past would have been seen as a derogatory statement. And I have a lot of those. But just being aware that, well, look, this is what we were doing beforehand, and this is what we're doing right now. This doesn't coincide with this. Okay, I can choose to react this way. And that's how I do it.
That is really awesome. Now we're getting some pretty good stuff over here, but I know that you had, depression. And one thing that came up is, the root cause. The root cause. Do you understand the root cause?
For me, I have a couple of them. The main one is suppressing my emotions. I went through a lot of very horrible stuff very early on in my life. And I wasn't allowed, or I didn't feel that I was allowed to really express how I was feeling at that time. And so I kept pushing it down. You can't act this way, or you can't feel this way, or you certainly can't say that. My whole childhood was one of suppression. You can't act. You have to act like a lady. When the very furthest thing from what I am is, the little girly girl with the curly hair and the little lace and buttons, and that's just not me. And that's the way that I was supposed to act. I was supposed to act that way, and that's just not who I was. So I had to suppress who I was and what I was really feeling, because, I wasn't the only one feeling that. But I certainly couldn't put any more burden on my mother at that point. So I suppressed my emotions so that I wouldn't cause her any more distress. And it just became a cycle. You know, at first I had to suppress my grief and my anger and my sadness and, you know, all of that. And then within a week of my father dying, I had to leave the only home I ever knew, go to a new house. You know, it was just myself and my mom. My mom had to figure out how she was going to support herself and myself, you know, and so we had all of this that she was going through and that I was going through, and I never got help for that part of it. And then there were new things that were introduced that were just piled on top of that, um, and it just snowballed, really. Or if you want to think of it as an avalanche, it just kind of, the snow just kind of compacts and compacts and compacts, and all of a sudden it just slides down the mountain. And that's basically what happened to me. I slid down the mountain into depression, and I'd been looking for a way up ever since.
How has clarity helped?
Immensely. Depression is like a fog in the middle of the dark. Um, you can't see in front of your face, and even if you could, you wouldn't know where the hand was. Okay? Um, you don't have clear thinking, you don't have clear feeling, you live literally in a fog. You're just going through the motions, or you're hiding in your bed under your covers. And you really can't see to find your way out. Um, you feel like you're at a crossroads all the time, and you have no idea which direction to go in. Being able to realize that I either have a script or I don't have a script. That I can choose to, obviously I'm not choosing to feel this way. So if I'm not choosing to feel this way, then it's my script. Just having that one thing to focus on has given me so much clarity. And that clarity has led to my awareness. And that awareness has led to my not having a depressive episode in a month, where I've been living in depression for 26 years.
Amazing.
Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get mad. That doesn't mean that I don't have down times, or times where I feel a little low, but it's not depression. There's a difference between those and an actual depression. So, but yes, clarity is huge. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel now.
Well, you've always been a big inspiration to me. And does the word divine, or does the word divine mean anything to you? Divine energy?
Yes, I've always felt it. Even in my darkest times, I've always felt like there was a divine presence with me, that I wasn't going through it alone. It's kind of like that poem Footprints.
Yes.
I've always had that feeling that I am never alone, no matter where I am. Sometimes that didn't help as much as I would like it to have done, but there was always help when I needed it. And I have experienced proof for myself that there is a divine presence out there. I have been given signs, wonders, all sorts of things that prove to me back when I was going through this kind of stuff, and still today, that that is.
You still there?
Can you hear
Stephanie?
me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah. So I've been proven, it's proven itself to me, visually, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I've got proof of a divine presence.
You really are a very bright light in the group and everything, and everything is really awesome. How about, can you relate or identify any, intuitive or psychic abilities that you have or are aware of?
Yeah. Um, I've had prophetic dreams. I've been able to, I should say, I've been to speak with family members that have gone on. Um, and that's part of the divine presence proof that I was talking about earlier. Um, I've known things before they happen. So, yeah.
How about, well, you probably shared it, but also, do you believe in guides and angels?
Yes, I've been visited by angels and guides and demons. So, yes.
That is pretty awesome. And what about your responsibility? How does your responsibility account for your life?
I've always been responsible in some way, shape, or form. It's always been required of me. It's always been expected of me. It's always been something that I fought against because I don't like being responsible. Sometimes I just like to go out and play and be a kid, if you know what I mean. Um,
Yep.
yeah, um, I had to be responsible very early on in my life, very early. Um, Never really felt that I was able to have a childhood. Always expected, you know, more was always expected of me than I really thought appropriate, that other people around me thought was appropriate. So yeah, responsibility is a big issue. Something that, like I said, I fought against, railed against, but always, in some way, shape, or form, I've always been responsible.
Stephanie, you definitely
Mm-hmm.
have very good honesty and very good, intuitive ability with your own self. And I'm really liking, a conversation. And one thing that came up is co-creation. How are you co-creating with the universe, your world?
I've always been somewhat of a dreamer. Um, Imagination plays a big part in my life. And I've always felt that if I can imagine it and I can dream it, then it can be created. So I try and think of ways to create what I see in my mind. Um, and it always seems to happen just when I need it, or just when I really want it. Things just kind of appear or come to fruition.
It's pretty amazing how when you know let things go and trust in the divine, you can really co-create. And um, I'm going to read to you a affirmation that you know came up, and I think
Okay.
I think it sounds good. I think it could resonate. Um, and I'd like to know what if it resonates with you, and if so, how. And it says that I am purified, uplifted, and protected through my connection with the divine. You want to hear it again? I'll read it
Yeah,
one
go
more
ahead.
time. I am purified, uplifted, and protected through my connection with the divine.
Yeah, that one really resonates. Yeah.
I could feel it.
Yeah. There was a time that I think I was, if I wasn't at my lowest point, I was at one of my second lowest points. And when you're sitting there in the middle of that darkness and that that depression, and you don't see a way out, um, you feel the weight of the world. You feel ugly. You feel alone, isolated. You're scared. And I felt this presence, this light, um, and it surrounded me and it swept through me. And I did. I felt uplifted. I felt purified. I felt protected. I felt that I wasn't alone. Um, I felt that I had a purpose, and that I was going to find my purpose. It really gave me a will to go on, a will to get up, to move ahead. It told me that everything was going to be okay. And so, yeah, that just so totally resonates. That could have been my story right there. That's who I am. I'm purified, uplifted, and protected by my connection with the divine. That's me.
Feels good saying it, right?
Oh yes. It's acceptance.
Exactly.
That's my soul right there. That's who I am. No need to go any further.
Well, Stephanie, I really, I mean, you are such, you're such a light in this world, and sometimes, and one thing I really, and to this day, I'm very, taken back by is people that have or been at a certain place and they find a way out. And it's like you're in a hole and it's dark, like you're shared, but you see that light and you find a way out. And, and it takes a lot from within to get out, but you do it because you have the strength and the wherewithal to do it. And sometimes it is something, power griding yourself, that gets you out. And a lot of times, you just get deeper and deeper in the hole. And the hole becomes your life. And,
Yes.
right now, somebody could be listening to this program, to us talking, and, they could really, relate to a lot of what you're saying, and they might be having something going on in their life. They could have experienced a loss. They could have had, any number of infinite possibilities somebody could be experiencing, right now, as we're as we're talking, and somebody would be listening, and this could be, someone now or someone, that's listening to the recording. But someone is listening and they're hearing our voices right now, and they're like, they really resonate with Stephanie. And what advice would you give to any stranger, anybody, someone you might know? But what advice can you give somebody from you that someone could really find useful and helpful and beneficial to them? What advice can you tell a total stranger?
That you can live with what you're going through. It may not seem like it now, but where you're at right now is not the be-all, end-all of life. You're amazing. Even if you can't feel it yourself, you are amazing. You will do wonderful things. You're strong because you've dealt with so much. And you will survive it. You just have to hang in there just a bit longer. And there are people around you, even in your soul, your own soul, that are cheering you on every step of the way that you are going, with anything you're going through right now. Your soul, your inner you, the person that you are deep down, no matter what your circumstances are, it has faith in you. And with that faith, you can pull through anything. You're going to survive it. That's who you are. You're a survivor. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. You wouldn't be on this earth if you weren't a survivor, if you weren't strong. And that in itself is the amazing part.
Stephanie,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a very, I mean, that was a great, that was straight from the heart. I definitely felt that, and it's been really, a pleasure. I just finished my cup of tea, and it's been a real pleasure having you on, Tea with Stephanie. And, I really do appreciate you taking the time and sharing, your heart with me and with everybody. And it really does mean a lot. Like I said, you've always been a big inspiration to me and everything. And I'll let you go, and you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, everyone. And I'm wishing y'all an awesome life.
So that was
And Mark, I want to thank you. was going to say, I just want to thank you as well, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, and I'm going to sign off. It was a wonderful conversation talking about real life stuff with Stephanie. She always, keeps things honest and real. And so we're going to sign off. This is Mark and with Tea with Stephanie. Thank you very much.